It is a common rule of thumb that history is written by the victors. The people who command the largest armies and build the biggest empires almost always get to decide how the story is told. But there is a glaring exception. How does a man who lost a battle, lost his life, and had only a tiny band of supporters end up entirely defeating a massive empire in the eyes of history? To understand this, we have to travel back to the year 680 CE. At this time, the Muslim world was expanding rapidly across vast new territories, but it was also standing at a critical moral crossroads. Right at the center of this tension was Imam Hussain. He was the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, and over his life he had earned a remarkable reputation of his own. People from all walks of life sought him out for his deep knowledge, his kindness toward the poor, and his unshakable sense of justice. Hussain didn't rely on military rank or political office for authority. Instead, his home in Medina became a center of learning where he spent his days teaching Islamic principles, helping the needy, and providing guidance to anyone who sought his wisdom. That reputation was tested when a new ruler named Yazid took power. Yazid's style of leadership directly contradicted the core Islamic values of justice, integrity, and piety that the community was built upon. Upon taking control, Yazid gave Hussain an ultimatum. He demanded that Hussain formally swear allegiance to him, publicly endorsing his rule. The stakes of this demand were incredibly high. Swearing allegiance would guarantee his family's safety and comfort, but because Hussain was a deeply respected figure, his endorsement would permanently validate corruption and tyranny for the entire Muslim world. Hussain refused. Knowing that staying in Medina would likely lead to a bloody conflict right inside his sacred home city, he made the difficult decision to uproot his family and leave. He traveled to the holy city of Mecca, seeking a temporary sanctuary. While there, he began receiving desperate letters from the people of Iraq. They were begging him to come and provide the leadership they so badly needed. Choosing to leave the safety of his home was his first major sacrifice. It proved that he was fully committed to preserving the integrity of his faith, even if it cost him his own peace. Hussain set out on the journey toward Iraq, but he wasn't leading a military expedition. His traveling party was very small, made up mostly of his own family members, including women and young children, along with a few close friends. Before reaching their destination, they were intercepted by a massive imperial army and forced to halt at Karbala. You can picture the imbalance. His tiny, isolated camp, entirely surrounded by an overwhelming, heavily armed military force. Then, the empire deployed a particularly cruel tactic. They completely cut off the camp's access to the nearby Euphrates River. For days, Hussein's family, including the women and young children, were subjected to agonizing thirst in the blistering desert heat. The imperial army was using the desert itself as a weapon, aiming to break the group's resolve through exhaustion and thirst before fighting actually began. The night before the inevitable clash, Hussain gathered his companions. He extinguished the camp's lights, offering everyone full permission to slip away in the dark and save themselves from what was coming. What happened next is remarkable. Not a single person left. His followers and family chose to stay right by his side, fully aware that they would not survive the next day. On the 10th day of the month, known as Ashura, the battle began. Against impossible odds, his companions and family members defended him with extraordinary bravery, falling one by one in the desert. Finally, after enduring immense physical suffering and watching his loved ones perish, Imam Hussain himself entered the battlefield, where he too was martyred. While the battle was a total military defeat, Hussein's choice to remain was a deliberate act meant to distinguish truth from tyranny forever. In the immediate aftermath, the empire took the surviving women and children captive. As far as the rulers were concerned, they had achieved total victory and silenced their opposition for good. But the surviving family members refused to be quiet. They boldly carried the story of Karbala back to the public, openly exposing the empire's brutality and ensuring the truth was never buried in the sand. History has an interesting way of sorting out the truth. The empire that killed him eventually fractured and collapsed into dust. Meanwhile, reverence for Imam Hussain only grew stronger with every passing century. The story of Karbala suggests that moral principles, human dignity, and justice hold a lasting weight that political power simply does not. Over 1,300 years later, that legacy is still very much alive. Millions of people across the globe continue to draw deep inspiration from his courage to stand firm against modern injustices. Hussain lost his life in the desert that day, but the principles he stood for outlasted the empire that tried to crush them.